Kiyan Anthony and Tyler Jackson are talking about playing together, and if those two commit to Syracuse, the Orange will have a special 2025 recruiting class.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And on today's show, Tyler Jackson and Kiyan Anthony, a pair of four-star recruits, four-star priority targets for Syracuse basketball, are talking about playing together. If those two were to commit, Syracuse basketball will have a special 2025 class. Plus, the Orange could have a good problem on their hands in the coming years. And we'll take a look at the recent recruiting history of Syracuse basketball. And spoiler alert, it's trending upward after this past class of 2024. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as playoffs wind down. The sport stops sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, a pair of four-star recruits in 2025 are talking about playing together. Kiyan Anthony and Tyler Jackson. Kiyan Anthony is a 6'5" shooting guard, ranked as high as 27th in the country, and he is Carmelo Anthony's kid. Carmelo Anthony, of course, is a freshman, led Syracuse basketball to its only national title in 2003. Tyler Jackson, on the other hand, is a 6'2" combo guard, ranked as high as 48th in the country on 24/7 Sports. So you're looking at a pair of not just four-star recruits, but top 30, top 50 overall players in the nation who both have Syracuse offers. I'm going to get to it in a second here. In a recent article by Sam Lance over at the Zags blog, who does great work over there, Tyler Jackson is quoted saying, quote, looking potentially to play together at the next level in college. And he's talking about himself and Kiyan Anthony. Well, you can already start putting together the pieces, connecting the dots, if you will, with Kiyan Anthony and Tyler Jackson. They both have Syracuse offers. Okay, that's a good start. But those two have offers that might overlap because they're top 50 prospects in the nation. That makes sense, right? They have both officially visited campus. All right, that's good. And they both grew up playing with each other and against each other in the Baltimore, Maryland area at the Mello Center. So that's the DMV region at the Mello Center. There's just a lot of Cuse ties here. DMV region, that's a Syracuse basketball recruiting hotbed. Mello Center in Baltimore, Carmelo Anthony, Syracuse. A lot of connections here. If these two players were to commit to Syracuse, you will have Tyler Jackson and Kiyan Anthony along with Sadiq White in the 2025 class, which would probably make it a top 10 class in the country, if not maybe even a little bit higher. That's why I think that this class can really be special, because the way Tyler Jackson is talking, it's possible that those two could be a package deal. It's not a guarantee. They're going to probably carve out their own paths, but it's possible that those paths are both the same. Hopefully, it's Syracuse, right? And there's more in the article about how what Adrian Autry has been saying to Tyler Jackson specifically, because it was Tyler Jackson who was quoted in this one. But basically, Tyler Jackson would be the lead guard if he were to come to Syracuse. That is what the impression was given in the article, and I'll leave a link to it in the description below. Remember that Jaquan Carlos is a senior, so this is his last year of eligibility. He's not going to be back next year, so right now he's the projected starting point guard for next season, so Syracuse will not have a projected starting point guard. But just remember, how special this class really could be. I'm not going to try to feed you guys false hope here. I'm reading these quotes from what Tyler Jackson is saying. I'm paraphrasing what he's saying, and it sounds really, really special. Like it could be special for Syracuse basketball. They already got Sadiq White in the boat, right? Class of 2025, 5-star power forward. You can bring in Kiyan Anthony and Tyler Jackson. You're looking at a top 10 high school recruiting class. You are. And just to spoil the recent recruiting history, if Syracuse were to get another top 10 class in 2025, that would be 2 years in a row. Because in 2024, it was top 10 as well on 3 with Donnie Freeman and Elijah Moore. To me, it gives off a yes, we can type of thing. Like, yes, we can. Syracuse can do this. They can get these 2 players. And I know it's on a smaller scale, but the first thing I thought of was honestly like Big 3 Miami Heat. And I remember when they had that whole watch party with LeBron, D-Wade, Chris Bosh, and everything like that. And it's highly scrutinized, I understand. But then beforehand, everyone was like, yes, we can, or yes, we did, right? It's almost like the same vibes, but obviously on a much smaller scale with Kiyan Anthony and Tyler Jackson and Sadiq White. But still, it would be a very nice Big 3 recruiting class, if you will. None of these 3 players, unless they jump in the rankings or Chris Senack were to commit to Syracuse, would be ranked as high as Donnie Freeman. Donnie Freeman is a consensus 5-star recruit. Sadiq White is only a 24/7 Sports composite 5-star recruit. None of them would be ranked as high as Donnie Freeman unless they jump up or Chris Senack were to commit to Syracuse. But to be honest with you guys, it doesn't really matter because it would be 3 top 50 prospects in the class of 2025, which would definitely put Syracuse, in my opinion, back on the map, at least from a recruiting standpoint. It would put Syracuse back on the map. And Tyler Jackson was also quoting there saying that they want to bring a national championship to whatever school they go to. And he only mentioned Syracuse as a school in there. I'll leave a link in the description below if you're getting a little bit confused with what I'm saying, because all the quotes are there from Tyler Jackson. Hopefully that national championship could be Syracuse. I'm not saying they're going to win a national championship altogether, but hey, they're talking about it. Let's see what happens. So overall, Tyler Jackson, Kiyan Anthony, talking about playing with each other at the next level, which would be college. They are a pair of top 50 prospects. Sadiq White is already in the boat for Syracuse basketball in the 2025 class. If those 3 were to join forces, Syracuse basketball will have an elite class in 2025. Now coming up, the Orange, due to their recruiting potential prowess, could have a good problem on their hands. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games. And the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. And if you're itching for Syracuse football season like I am, guess what? FanDuel has released the odds for Syracuse's first game against Ohio. The Orange are 15.5-point favorites to get the W. You think the Cuse can cover? Well, bet it right now on FanDuel. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the streaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Welcome back, everyone, into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and on today's show, we are going over why the Syracuse Basketball 2025 recruiting class can truly put the Orange back on the map, just in terms of a recruiting perspective. hopefully it can translate to wins, more wins than losses, right? But at least from a recruiting perspective, Syracuse's 2025 class, potentially with Tyler Jackson and Kiyan Anthony in the fold, it can be a truly special class in 2025. Now we're going to talk about what could be a good problem for Syracuse in the coming years. So also on the Zags blog in a separate article, which again, I will leave a link in the description below, from Sam Lance, Sadiq White is quoted talking about Syracuse basketball recruiting. I'm going to get to the point soon. But first of all, Sadiq White helping in the recruiting efforts is good. Very nice. I'm happy about that. It's not part of the job description. Sadiq White, while he is a Syracuse basketball commit, it is not on him to get all these recruits. But at the same time, it is nice that he is helping out with the recruiting effort. It's nice that he is helping out because ultimately he is the best player that Syracuse has, and he's the only player that Syracuse has in its 2025 class. The reason why I mentioned he's the best player is because, well, he would still be the highest ranked recruit if Tyler Jackson and Kiyan Anthony and this other player I'm about to mention commit to the Cuse. But Sadiq White mentions in the article that he's trying to bring in Tyler Jackson and Kiyan Anthony, so who we just talked about, that's expected. But the other one, I'll give you a moment to guess about the other player he's talking about. 3, 2, 1. Acaden Lewis is the other player that he is talking about potentially bringing to Syracuse. Acaden Lewis is a 6'3" point guard from Baltimore, so that's the DMV region. Once again, a Syracuse basketball recruiting hotbed. He is a consensus 4-star recruit, and he's ranked as high as 34th in the country on 24/7 Sports. So another top 50 prospect in Acaden Lewis. Now, Syracuse is in the running for Acaden Lewis without Sadiq White, per se, right? He recently released his top 8 schools, and the top 8 schools included Syracuse alongside Kentucky, Tennessee, UConn, Michigan, North Carolina, Duke, and Auburn. So a really impressive top 8 for Acaden Lewis. But nevertheless, Syracuse is in that group of 8 schools. Now, according to Charlie Perrin at the Zags blog, another Zags blog person right there, Lewis does plan on visiting all 8 schools before he actually makes his decision. I understand that. It means that he wants to give every school in his top 8 a fair chance, which bodes well for Syracuse that he's going to give them a fair chance. So let's play a game here. Let's play a little bit of a game. Best case scenario happens, and Tyler Jackson and Kiyan Anthony commit to Syracuse. Let's go. We're all very happy, right? Acaden Lewis also commits to Syracuse. Well, you got 3 guards. You got 3 guards, 2 of which can play point guard. So that's Acaden Lewis and Tyler Jackson. And then you have Kiyan Anthony, who is a 6'5" shooting guard. You already kind of see where I'm going with this? There's a good problem here because you got 3 guards. Who's going to play? And by the way, that's not counting Elijah Moore. It's not counting Elijah Moore because Elijah Moore will be a sophomore in 2025. I highly doubt he's a one-and-done player. And unless he transfers, which is possible in this day and age, you never quite know. But let's say Elijah Moore also is back. Now you got 4 guards. What about Chance Westry? Is that 5? Lucas Taylor is graduating, I believe. So overall, you could have a good problem on your hands. A lot of talented guards. And remember, only 2 guards are going to start, maybe 3 if you really want to play small ball. It's a good problem to have. If you can get Kiyan Anthony, Tyler Jackson, and Acaden Lewis to commit, that's 3 highly touted guards in the 2025 class. Sadiq White is a power forward, which you can basically pencil in as the starter for there because Donnie Freeman, in all likelihood, will not be back with Syracuse next year. He's a one and done caliber prospect. But I think we take that problem, once again, a good problem. And I've mentioned good problems before on the show. If you recall, during the height of transfer portal season, when talking about Malik Brown potentially staying before he transferred to Duke, I mentioned how it's a good problem that they have Malik Brown and Donnie Freeman, right? They're two power forwards. One is going to start, one's not, but regardless, it's a lot of talent. You need a lot of talent. Of course, Malik Brown then transfers to Duke, but Syracuse still brings in a guy like Jair Davis who can play the 3 or the 4, and once again, it creates a good problem at the forward position because, well, you got Donnie Freeman, Chris Bell, and Jair Davis. It's a good problem. So once again, you bring in 3 highly touted guards in the high school recruiting class. It creates maybe a little bit of a logjam, but it's a logjam of highly talented players, which is a good thing because it'll help Syracuse basketball win games, which is ultimately the bottom line here, winning basketball games, right? You need to win the basketball games. It's great to be a great recruiting team, but you need to win. Ask Kentucky what it's like to always have the number 1 recruiting class and get bounced in the round of 64, right? Bottom line, though, you get Acaden Lewis, you get Tyler Jackson, you get Kiyan Anthony. You have 3 really strong guard prospects in 2025. So it'll be interesting to see if the best case scenario happens and they all commit, what Adrian Autry does with potentially 4 to 5 certainly playable guards on the roster in 2025. Now coming up, we're going to talk about the recent recruiting history for Syracuse basketball and where this potential class could stack up with it. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Day is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Day now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Welcome back, everyone, into the Locked On Syracuse Podcast. I'm Jackson Holzer, and on today's show, we have gone over why I believe the class of 2025 for Syracuse basketball recruiting can be special, because Tyler Jackson and Kiyan Anthony are talking about playing with each other at the next level. And then I brought up how Syracuse could have a good problem in 25-26 if they can also get Acaden Lewis to hop on board, because Sadiq White is talking to Tyler Jackson and Kiyan Anthony and Acaden Lewis about committing to Syracuse. So maybe a good problem on our hands with a lot of talent at the guard position. And now it's time to go over the recent recruiting history of Syracuse basketball and why we might be witnessing a potential boom, if you will, with Syracuse basketball recruiting. So on On3, I mentioned this earlier in the podcast, but on On3 right now, Syracuse has the 10th best high school recruiting class in the country in 2024. Now, you might be saying, how can that be the case? They only have 2 players. Well, it's basketball recruiting, not football recruiting. In basketball, it's a lot about the quality of the player that you are getting rather than the totality of the class, so the amounts. Basically, it's quality over quantity when ranking recruiting in basketball, because most teams have pretty small classes, 2 to 3, maybe 4 if you're lucky, right? The blue bloods sometimes will get 5 to 6 players. For the most part, it's 2 to 3 players in every class. Syracuse has 2. One of them is Donnie Freeman, who is a consensus 5-star recruit, and the other is Elijah Moore, who is a consensus 4-star recruit. So you can see why Syracuse is ranked pretty highly, especially because Donnie Freeman is one of the best players in the nation on his own. So that is why Syracuse has a top 10 class in 2024, which is a good thing. We'll take a top 10 class however we can get it, right? It's like, let's say Syracuse were to land the number 1 player in the country, which in 2024 was Cooper Flagg. Let's say they landed Cooper Flagg, and that was the only player they landed in the class. That class would be top 5. On its own, it would be a top 5 class because that player is so elite. Kind of a similar deal with Donnie Freeman. You also tack on Elijah Moore, you get a top 10 class. Now in 2023, maybe the dark ages of Syracuse basketball recruiting, Syracuse had the, get ready for it, it kind of hurts to read and kind of hurts to look at because I have the number on my phone here. Syracuse had the 149th ranked class in 2023 just on high school recruiting. This is just high school recruiting, not commit class. The commit class wasn't great either. It was a 149th. That is because the only player that Syracuse brought in 2023 from high school was William Patterson. That was it. It was only William Patterson, who was a 3-star prospect who transferred from Syracuse after this season. Not great. Nothing against William Patterson, but that's the only player you bring in. That's not a great recruiting class, and there's a reason why it's ranked 149th. So already, they're trending upwards because last year they had the 10th, and the year before that they were at 149. They already have Sadiq White, and it's too early right now with the amount of players that haven't committed yet in 2025. It's too early to see where Syracuse falls, but if you were to have Sadiq White on your own, you're looking at probably a top 30 class overall in the nation, just only if you get Sadiq White. So they're already trending pretty well, right? Let's compare this potential class to 2022. The 2022 class is a class that I have frequently brought up here on this podcast because a lot of players played from that class. There were 6 total, 6 of them. 3 of them were 4-stars, 3 3-stars in 2022. It was ranked as the 19th best recruiting class in the country because, like I said earlier, it was a great class. They had a lot of volume in it, but none of the prospects were even close to Donnie Freeman as a prospect. Even Judah Mintz, who I'm going to get to in a second, even Judah Mintz was not on the level of Donnie Freeman of recruiting, which is why Syracuse has the 10th best class in 2024 with 2 players, but with 6 players in 2022, they were 19th. So let's get to Judah Mintz because he was the highest ranked recruit in that class. He was ranked as high as the 36th best player over on ESPN. So that's pretty good. Not slighting Judah Mintz by any means. That's good. And obviously he panned out. I know that the fan base, it's kind of split on him as to, was he really that great for the team or not? I'm in favor of that. He was really good for the team and everything like that, even though he did have his weaknesses. But overall, I don't think any of us can deny that he panned out. That if you get a player who's ranked 36th in the country and he plays 2 seasons for you, he finishes 2nd on the team in scoring 1 year, leads the team in scoring another year, finishes 2nd team All ACC, that's a hit. You hit, right? And obviously he's trying to make it in the NBA now. Judah Mintz, as a prospect, I'm speaking as a prospect, where he was ranked on all these recruiting services combined together. If you were to put him in the class of 2025, let's say Syracuse were to land the best case scenario, Sadiq White, Kiyan Anthony, Tyler Jackson, and Acaden Lewis, Judah Mintz would slot in as the 3rd best player in the class. Sadiq White would be number 1. Kiyan Anthony is a more highly rated prospect. And then number 3 would be Judah Mintz. And Judah Mintz is basically about the same as what Tyler Jackson is. Or not Tyler Jackson, what Acaden Lewis is in recruiting. The other 4-stars in 2022 were Chris Bell and Justin Taylor. Now, Chris Bell is entering his junior year. He has certainly panned out, in my opinion. He's not a complete player, but he is still a very good player at the college level. Justin Taylor didn't quite work out. We'll see how he does at James Madison, where he transferred there. they were the other 4 stars in the 2022 class, they would be the lowest rated players in 2025. Again, no shot to them, no slight to them. I'm just going by based on what the recruiting services are saying. If you were to rank all the players and compare it to 2022, Sadiq White would be number 1. You would have Kiyan Anthony number 2. Then you would have Judah Mintz at 3. Acaden Lewis at 4. Tyler Jackson at 5. And then Bell and Taylor. Bell and Taylor would be last. Those were the 4-star recruits in 2022. And Judah Mintz was obviously the highest, followed by Bell and Taylor. Bell and Taylor were more on the lower end 4-star recruits. They were on the lower end. They were right around where Elijah Moore is honestly ranked. There's nothing wrong with that. You could still obviously be a very good player like Chris Bell. But this is kind of my point here about this 2025 class. That, these players are 4 stars that they're targeting for the most part, but they're not just any 4 stars. They are elite 4 stars, top 50 players in the country. In 2022, they only had one top 50 player, and that was Judah Mintz, even though they had that whole volume and everything. If you're asking about Malik Brown, he was a 3-star prospect. Obviously, 3 stars can hit 2. So overall, 2025, if they can get Tyler Jackson and they can get Kiyan Anthony, and they are the favorites for them right now, they are the favorites. If you go check the On3 prediction machine, they are the favorites. And hopefully they can cash that in and land those 2 at least. You can get Acaden Lewis. Now you're looking at 4. I don't want to talk about what would happen more than that, because if they can get anyone else, that would be crazy. But if you can get those 4, I would already be through the moon. So overall, Syracuse is potentially looking at having a back-to-back top 10 recruiting class for the first time since they did it 3 years in a row, which was from 2014 to 2016. That's what they're looking at right now. It's been a long time, but they did it 3 years in a row from 2014 to 2016, and they are looking at doing that again, once again. This would just be 2 years in a row, but I think we'd all take it. So good job to Adrian Autry and the entire coaching staff on the recruiting front so far, landing Sadiq White. Hopefully, fingers crossed, Tyler Jackson and Kiyan Anthony, it won't be for a little while, probably in the fall, decide to take their talents to Syracuse. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. If you like this video, click that like button. And if you really liked it, subscribe to the channel and turn on those notifications so you know right away when I am dropping the next podcast. And everyone, take care.